Hello and welcome to another Truth for Youth. Now in this brief video I want to draw your attention to Psalm 64. And in this psalm, David is a psalmist and he's praying. And he's praying to the Lord initially about his fear. And so verse 1 talks about fear. But by the end of the verse, the psalmist is talking about gladness and trust and glory. And so what I want to look at is simply this, his transition from fear to gladness. Now, in verse 1, what the psalmist does is he relates his fears, his troubles, his concern to God. Verse 1, "Hear my voice, O God, in my prayer, preserve my life from fear of the enemy." David had a very real enemy, which he was afraid of. And so he brought that to the Lord in prayer, which is right to do so. And so in the first 6 verses of this psalm, David really focuses upon the enemy, what the enemy may well do, what the enemy is like, and he's terrified, okay? So he's terrified of the enemy. But then he comes to verse number 7, and everything changes. Here's the reason why. Verse 7, "But God shall." That's how the verse begins. And that's when everything changes. He takes his focus off the terror of the enemy onto the terrific nature of his God. And that's when everything changed. And so as he begins now to speak about what God shall do, he's got this bedrock, this confidence. He has a sovereign God who will do what's good. And he says in verse 7, "But God shall shoot at them with the arrow." And what he means there is that God will deal with the enemy in his time, in his way, and according to his will. And when he is filled with confidence in God, that's when he comes to verse 10 and says, "The righteous shall be glad in the Lord, and shall trust in him. And all the upright in heart shall glory." So he's fixated now upon the greatness of his God. And you know, today, many people are terrified because of the coronavirus, and I understand why. It's a very real concern and care. It makes the future very uncertain. You may be scared of becoming sick yourself, or loved ones who are sick or may become sick. And we need to be sensible and cautious and do everything we can to mitigate the spread of the virus for sure. And yet we don't want to be living in outright fear and be terrified either. So I want to encourage you. Remember today the sovereign almighty God in whom we trust, who will do all things well. And as the psalmist experienced here, while you fixate only on the fear, only on the enemy, you will be filled with fear. But when we begin to fix our minds upon the sovereignty of a good and gracious God who does all things well, we will be filled with gladness in the Lord, trust in the Lord, and with glorying in the Lord. You see, for the psalmist here, his circumstances didn't change by the end of the psalm. The enemy was still there, but he had different perspective now because he had got a real grip upon the greatness of his God. I trust the Lord these times will keep you safe, will help you with all your plans and schooling and everything for the future. But we do pray that the Lord will give us a great faith and confidence and peace in Him, that although the rest of the world may be filled with terror, that we, yes, having wisdom and being careful, would also not lose our joy in the Lord, that we would be full of gladness, trust, and glorying in God throughout this pandemic. Thank you for watching.